Hello everybody and welcome to my video covering Dark World. As I'm writing this, it's speculated that the Dark Worlds will release soon based on the ban of Silva. So I'm making this video before we know exactly what cards are going to be added, and with that in mind I'll cover all the not yet added Dark World cards. But since they're not in the game yet, I'll be using the Omega Yu-Gi-Oh! Simulator for this video. But before we get into all that, I'd just like to extend a sincere thank you to everyone who left a like on my last video. You guys blew it up with over 10% like in the video, and that really helps me out with the algorithm pushing my videos and showing up higher in the search results. So if you like what I do here, click that like button and don't forget to subscribe. With that out of the way, let's talk Dark World. This is a Fiend/Dark deck and it's a classic archetype, released right around the time I stopped playing. The main gimmick of the archetype is discarding cards. The spells facilitates the discards and the monsters work as fodder, giving us good effects when sent. Because of this, most people pair up Dark Worlds with Dangers who discard random cards from hand to special summon themselves, which works perfectly with the archetype. My version you see here focuses on setting up strong link monsters on turn 1 like IP into Avermax or Blackluster Soldier, or going for an OTK through our rank 8 and Numeron Dragon if we're going second. Let's start going through all the new cards. First off, the new big bad boss monster Grapha, Dragon Overlord of the Dark World. It has two effects, and the first is a quick effect. When our opponent activates a monster effect or a normal spell or trap card, while we have cards in our hand, we can change the effect of the card to your opponent discards one card. Since this changes our opponent's monsters, we're the ones who are going to discard, but it will count as an opponent's card's effect for the purposes of our Dark World monsters like Brow. Pot of Greed? Yes please. Basically, this turns our Dark World monsters into semi-hand traps that can do a myriad of things. Draw 2, steal monsters, hand rip and more. The second effect is a float, where we can bring back its material, the main deck Grapha from either the graveyard or banished pile. Overall, a fantastic addition to the archetype, giving us access to our more powerful discard effects that would otherwise be dependent on our opponent. And this has been speculated on Reddit to be splashable in Tearlaments, so watch out. Next up, Genta, Gateman of the Dark World, and this is a really cool card. It can send itself to search gates of the Dark World, then if it's banished from the graveyard while we control a Dark World card, it can special summon itself. And what card happens to banish from the graveyard? Gates of Dark World, and more on the gates in just a second. Genta sets up for the gates perfectly. Before it was pretty inconsistent setting up both a Dark World in hand and one in grave, and now it's super easy. Just have to open Genta and any other Dark World. Also to note is that only the special summon effect is once per turn and the search can be used any number of times in a turn. Next up, we have the new quick play fusion spell Dark World Accession. During the main phase, it can special summon a Fiend fusion monster by banishing materials from the field or graveyard, and if we're fusion summoning a Dark World, we can also discard the monsters. It can also put itself back in our hand by discarding a Dark World monster. Since our only target for this is Grapha, we can always discard monsters if we'd like. We can also pick and choose, say we'd like to discard one and banish another, that's totally fine too. This works really well with the deck, and the fact that we can banish from the graveyard and it's a quick play means that we can set this to protect it from our dangers and go through our combo, and then on our opponent's turn bring Grapha out. Another new spell is the Dark World Archives. This time it's a continuous spell and boy is it good. During our main phase we can discard a Dark World monster to boost our Dark Worlds on the field by the level of the discarded monster times 100. This gives us a starting point to discard if we need one, and can boost our monsters by quite a lot if we choose to discard one of our more powerful Dark Worlds like Grapha. Great for just closing out games. But that's not all. If a Fiend is discarded by the effect of a Dark World card, we can discard a card and draw 2 more. Since most of our deck is Fiends or Dark Worlds, this ends up being very good draw power. And then finally, last of the new cards is Rainbow Overking of the Dark World. You can special summon this card from the graveyard by returning one level 7 or lower Dark World monster to your hand. If itself is discarded, we can add a level 5 or higher Dark World from our deck to the hand except itself. And if it's discarded by our opponent's card, we can also summon a Dark World from the deck or graveyard. Being able to special summon itself and setting up Dark Worlds in our hand is invaluable in this deck, and the fact that it also searches the other card in the deck, the main deck Grapha, that does the exact same thing makes it even better. And since it's level 8, this solidifies our rank 8 access and lessens our reliability on dangers to establish the high level monsters. Overall, this is a very nice addition to the archetype. Now I'm quickly gonna go over 2 cards that aren't in Master Duel yet, but might be added in this selection pack or in the future, and that's Muckraker from the Underworld and Salamander Catalyzer. Muckraker is a Link 2 that requires 2 effect monsters and can resurrect Fiend monsters from the grave by discarding a card. Obviously in a Fiend deck focused on discarding, it fits perfectly, and I hope it will be added because I think it would add some needed consistency in this deck that isn't reliable on our draw. Salamander is a basic extender that can reveal this card and 1 Fiend monster, discard 1 and special summon the other. It also floats, but when we destroy a monster in battle, so you know, I wouldn't count on it. But overall it's a nice addition that fits perfectly with the deck, so again I hope this will be added. Let's go through the rest of the deck, starting with the dangers. And if you don't know how the dangers work, they all basically share the same effect. Discard a random card from your hand to special summon this card and then draw 1. If they're discarded by their own effects, they all have a unique effect. For example, Thunderbird can pop a set card and Bigfoot can pop a face up. I'm running one of each of Danger Bigfoot and Danger Thunderbird specifically to help with the rank 8s, but since Rainbow is in the game now, they're not as vital as they used to be. Then I'm running 3 each of Chupacabra and Mothman to help with general extension and our rank 4 pool. Chupacabra also happens to be a Fiend, so that's nice. Then we have the old Dark World cards, starting with the big boy I've mentioned a few times now, Grapha. Grapha can special summon itself just like Rainbow by returning a Dark World to the hand. If it's discarded, it can pop a card, and if it's discarded by our opponent, it can rip a card from their hand, and if that card is a monster, we can special summon it to our field. Another easily special summoned level 8, and this is also required material to summon the extra deck version of Grapha, so keep that in mind. Next up is Snow. If it's discarded, it can add a Dark World card to our hand, and if our opponent does it, we can add both a card to our hand and special summon a monster from our opponent's graveyard. One of our best discard targets as it replaces itself. Not much to say here, it's Rota pretty much. And similar to Snow is Brow. If it's discarded, it draws 1, and if our opponent does it, it draws 2. Another great discard target along Snow, and Greed is good. Last but not least for the monsters is Sephiroth. This guy can bounce a card back to our hand to special summon himself from the graveyard. This makes him both a good discard fodder and very good with the next card, the Gates of Dark World. It has a couple of effects. First, it boosts our Fiends by 300. This makes our level 8s pretty sizable, with extra deck Grapha landing on 3500 attack. Second, it can banish a Fiend from the grave, discard another from hand, and then draw 1 card. Combined with cards like Genta and Snow, this card might as well read special summon Genta, add any Dark World to hand, and then draw 1. Importantly, this is a soft once per turn, so if we have multiple copies, we can use it multiple times. And this is where Sephiroth comes in. They can bounce it back to our hand after we've already used it once. And then we can just play it again and use it again. Pretty amazing. And then the rest of the main deck is either just hand traps or generic staples. In the extra deck we have the aforementioned Grapha, I won't go over him again. Then we have number 97, Draglubion, which is one of our win conditions. It's unable to be targeted, giving us protection from impermanent effect veilers, and it can detach a material to summon a dragon number monster from our extra deck, and then attach another number dragon to it. And we have 2 targets for this, that's number 38 and number 100. Number 38 is a once per turn spell negate and can force monsters to attack it. And number 100 is the way we win if we're going second. It can detach material to gain attack equal to the ranks of Xyz monsters on the field times 1000. Since Draglubion is rank 8 and number 100 is rank 1, it will be at least 9000 attack, allowing us to easily swing for game. Baguska, because sometimes you draw a bad hand or you're unlucky with the dangers, and Baguska can buy us some time. Dugaras, that's a similar thing here. We can go into this hoping to draw more gas. It has 3 effects, but we pretty much only use the first one to draw 2 and discard 1, which obviously works very well with our deck. Last of the rank 4s is the MVP of the tier limit meta, Abyss Dweller. It stops effects from activating in the graveyard. Enough said. Then we have the links, starting from the bottom and working our way up. IP Mask Arena allows us to link summon on our opponent's turn and provides destruction protection. I mostly use this to go into Avermax. Nightmare Phoenix can discard a card to pop a back row, and removal is always good and discards is our lifeblood. Nightmare Unicorn can discard 1 to shuffle back a card into the deck. Same thing here, removal is good and discards are also good. Next up, Blackluster Soldier, and I consider this to be a flex spot. You could really put anything here, Curios, Access Code Talker, etc. BLS has target and destruction protection if we use a level 7 or higher as material for it. And since we run a bunch of level 8s and sometimes we can only get 3 monsters on the board, this guy serves as a pretty good endpoint. If it destroys a monster by battle, it can also either banish a card, attack twice next turn, or gain 1500 attack. This isn't super likely to come up, but it's pretty solid in my eyes, and it's easy to get since it's in the Gaia structure deck, so it's basically free. Apollosa. It negates monsters' effects, and since we can swarm the board, it's pretty good in this deck. Avermax, as I mentioned before, if it's summoned using IP, it's pretty much just a better BLS. Target protection, destruction protection, and always wins battle with special summoned monsters. Finally, Underworld Goddess of the Closed World can be summoned using a monster on the opponent's side of the field as material as well, and negates the opponent's board on summon and can negate effects in the graveyard. Also, it's unaffected unless targeted by the effect, and it's a great boss monster that does a lot for us. And that's the list. Usually here we'd go into a combo, but this deck doesn't really have combos in a way that a usual deck would. The dangers add a level of randomness to the deck, which means I really won't have a solid combo line for you today. Instead, I'm gonna put in a replay from Omega with some chill music, and we're gonna end on a clip showing all the cards in the deck. Basically, the aim with the Dark Worlds is just to use your discard effects to discard the monsters, and then use their discard effects to loop back more stuff into hand, swarm the field, establish some strong monsters, and just pass. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this deck once it's added to Master Duel. Like, comment, subscribe, you know the drill. I'll see you guys later. Bye.